since Charles Bronson got Stomper. Way too early for Threatener, there was the Swarm, Hell Nation, all 7-inch collections, the kids on Cold Nation, they tell her that she's uncool, 'cause she's still preoccupied with 1999. What's up, Black Jean enthusiast? It's me, Emma, the heavy metal lawyer. Here today, it's time for the complete and utter eradication of all generic pop punk. Now, after my video on the year 1991 and death metal did so well, I thought people might be interested in similar videos for other genres. The challenge is that most other subgenres of extreme music do not have as clear of a golden year as death metal does. So if you disagree with me that 1999 was the golden year for Powerviolence, let me know in the comments in which year you would pick, whether it would be earlier or later, because I think there are arguments to be made for both. That's because Powerviolence, the even faster and more chaotic version of the already fast and chaotic hardcore punk, basically came in two waves. And 1999 was the crest of the first wave of Powerviolence, whereas the second wave crested around 2006. Powerviolence, while similar to grindcore, was less based in death metal, more screaming than growling, less complicated riffs and song structures. They do share some common ancestors, though, most notably seminal hardcore band Siege also influenced each other a lot in the 90s. Powerviolence had a presence throughout the country, but especially in California, with famous punk venue 924 Gilman in Berkeley hosting Fiesta Grande, the first wave's big annual Powerviolence festival. And then the second wave of Powerviolence also had a big annual festival, Super Sabato Gigante. Powerviolence basically comes in four major flavors. You have your snotty punk Powerviolence, epitomized by the band Charles Bronson. Then there's the crust punk adjacent Powerviolence, epitomized by the band Capitalist Casualties, R.I.P. Spider Mike. There's emo violence, which ran in the same circles as screamo and scrams and emotional hardcore, especially inspired by the album Petitioning the Empty Sky by Converge, and epitomized by Orchid and generally found up and down the East Coast. We're sad on this coast. And then there's Powerviolence that is practically overlapping with grindcore, generally going back and forth between those punk beats and the blast beats, especially influenced by releases like Misery Index by Assuck, and epitomized by bands like Magruder Grind. While Powerviolence was rooted in the most extreme version of hardcore in the 80s, like Siege, Septic Death, SSD Control, and so forth, it was really in the 90s that things kicked off, due in no small part to the label Slap-A-Ham Records, started by spaz vocalist and bassist Chris Dodge, which put out the vast majority of the first wave of Powerviolence releases. A lot of the best bands got started in the early 90s, but for a while most bands were only releasing LPs, I assume due to cost constraints, and as a lover of full-length albums, that is why I think the scene crested in 1999, because that's when you got the most full-length releases. I'm guessing one big reason that happened in 1999 specifically was due to the success and popularity of the self-titled album Drop Dead by crusty Powerviolence band Drop Dead in 1998, showing that yes, there were people willing to listen to about 20 minutes or so of Powerviolence and pay money for it. But I was just a kid in 1999, not going to shows of any kind yet, so I'd be curious if people actually involved with the scene would pick a different year for the peak based on the shows that were happening or the scene generally. Anyways, without further ado, let's get into what makes 1999 such a great year for Powerviolence. First off, we have Combat Wounded Veteran out of Tampa, Florida, with their one and only album, I Know a Girl Who Develops Crime Scene Photos. I love Combat Wounded Veteran. They've got one of the best names in Powerviolence, and think they're a good band to start out with because they borrow from all the different flavors of Powerviolence. They're snotty punks with song titles like You Win, I'm Stupid. They have some emotional lyrics, and they definitely have entire tracks that are probably more accurately described as grindcore due to death metal influences. Now, Emo Violence got its flagship album in 1999 with Orchid's Chaos Is Me, which I have here on vinyl. It's just a classic album that showed you could write songs that whine about your feelings without actually whining and instead screaming. Emo Violence in general was blowing up this year with other albums like This Endless Breath by Usurp Synapse, the self-titled Joshua Fit for Battle by Joshua Fit for Battle, and Unfound by Love Lost But Not Forgotten. And most importantly, the legendary split between Enemy Soil and Page 99. Political Powerviolence band Black Army Jacket put out their album 222, or 222, I'm not sure which one, in 1999, which had much more of a metal influence due to spending a lot of time touring and playing with metal bands like Benumb and Noothgrush and Death. The best metal-influenced Powerviolence album of 1999, though, was the immensely heavy Parasitic Skies by The Swarm. Holy fuck, I love this album so much. Though a close second should probably be awarded to Heavy Metal Vomit Party by Godstomper, if only because this band goes harder than most despite only being bass and drums. This bass and drum Powerviolence can still be heard today with great bands like Set Star Set, who were in my top albums of the year for 2021. Spaz, arguably the kings of Powerviolence, put out their full-length album Crush, Kill, Destroy, which notably featured a lot of commentary on what was then a decade-old Powerviolence scene, with songs like Black & Decker, Crusty Wrecker, Campaign for Emo Destruction, and Shove the Internet Up Your Gaping Anal Cavity at dork.com. The other kings of Powerviolence, Charles Bronson, were dead. Their band was over. But 1999 was the year that their complete discography, or as they called it, complete disco crappy, was released, providing a major influence for the second wave of Powerviolence in the 2000s. Crust punk Powerviolence band Capitalist Casualties put out their album Subdivisions in Ruin, which does a good job of capturing the nightmare of neoliberalism that existed in 1999, as did Fucked Up Mess by Hell Nation and West Side Horizons by Despise You. Cybernetic and, dare I say, twee Powerviolence band Melt Banana put out what might be the first live Powerviolence album in 1999, 13,000 Miles at Light Velocity. And while again Parasitic Skies is a really, really great album, I think the best Powerviolence album of 1999, a noisy, snotty, chaotic cyclone, the appropriately titled Powerviolence Forever by Fuck on the Beach out of Tokyo, Japan. I used to have a Fuck on the Beach shirt. Don't know what happened to it. That was one of my favorite band shirts. R.I.P. my Fuck on the Beach shirt. It was probably stolen by some oogle in Richmond. Stupid oogles. And that's 1999, the greatest year of Powerviolence in a nutshell. If you like this video, please let me know in a comment, and please subscribe. If you hated this video, please let me know about that in a comment and subscribe. And if you somehow found this boring but still got to the end of the video, hey, why not just leave a comment now and subscribe?